So today, we're going to be taking a look at chapter 79 from the Built for God movement handbook. This chapter is called Forgiving Debt. What makes this so intriguing is that this handbook is actually a Christian edition of the Tao Te Ching. So we're bringing together some really interesting philosophical and spiritual traditions here.
Yeah, I'm fascinated to see how those two things are going to kind of intertwine and inform each other.
Absolutely. So within this chapter, we're going to be looking at two main sections. They're called Restore and Renewal. And they're presented as kind of lenses or frameworks for how we can approach things like obligations, even our own internal motivations.
Yeah, I think that resonates with a lot of people because I think that that's something that we all struggle with.
Absolutely. And the chapter kind of kicks off with this really thought-provoking question. It says, after settling a bitter dispute, some resentment remains. How can this be good? And I think we can all relate to that, right? Even when you've resolved an argument on the surface, there's often this lingering feeling of, unease or negativity that kind of sticks around.
Yeah, it's like that stain that just won't go away.
Exactly. So how do we even begin to unpack that idea and find a way forward?
Well, the first section, Restore, it kind of lays the groundwork with some core principles. And it starts by acknowledging this very real human experience, right? That even after you've reached an agreement, there can be this leftover resentment that just persists.
And it's interesting because it immediately connects this idea to the Christian concept of forgiveness. It's specifically referencing Jesus' teaching in Matthew 18, where he talks about forgiving 77 times.
Right, which is obviously not meant to be taken literally.
Right. It's more about emphasizing this ongoing nature of forgiveness, that it's not a one-time thing.
Yeah, it's about really transcending that initial conflict and moving towards a deeper level of reconciliation.
Absolutely. And addressing those deeper hurts that might still be there even when the argument itself is over.
Yeah, I think that's the real challenge. How do you actually let go of those negative emotions and find genuine peace,
Absolutely. So then the chapter introduces this idea of a righteous man, and it describes him as someone who fulfills his part of a bargain without demanding anything in return.
Okay, so kind of going above and beyond.
In a way, yeah. And what's fascinating is how this connects to the Christian idea of grace.
Okay, I'm listening.
So grace is often described as this unearned favor from God. It's a gift given freely. And similarly, this idea in the chapter is encouraging us to fulfill our obligations, not because we're expecting something in return,
right,
but because it's simply the right thing to do.
Do it out of the goodness of your heart.
Exactly. And the chapter even references a passage in Luke 6 where Jesus advocates for lending without expecting repayment, which is
so counterintuitive.
It really is, right? Because we're so used to thinking about transactions and what we're going to get out of something.
What's in it for me?
Exactly. And then the chapter contrasts this with the unrighteous who are constantly demanding compensation, and it links that back to warnings against greed that are found in the New Testament, like in 1 Timothy.
Right. So it's kind of setting up these two different motivations, right?
Right. This real fork in the road. Are we driven by what we can accumulate or by the integrity of simply doing what we've promised to do?
I see.
And that kind of leads into this next idea about God's impartiality. So the chapter talks about how God is impartial, and it cites passages from 1 Peter and Romans to support that. But then it also says that God gives to those who serve others. How do we reconcile these two seemingly different ideas?
Right, because at first glance, it almost sounds like a contradiction.
It does. So I think the key here is understanding what giving really means in this context. God's impartiality means that he doesn't show favoritism based on, superficial attributes.
Right.
But his generosity, his giving, often flows towards those who embody his values.
I see.
And serving others is such a cornerstone of Christian teaching.
Okay.
So the chapter clarifies that true wealth, in God's eyes, isn't about material possessions, but it's about that spiritual richness that's cultivated through kindness, humility, and acts of service.
So it's not about getting ahead in a worldly sense.
Exactly.
But about aligning yourself with God's values through your actions.
Right. And then experiencing a different kind of reward.
A more spiritual reward.
Exactly. So I think that the core takeaway from this Restore section is that choosing to act righteously, offering forgiveness even when it's difficult, and serving others without expecting anything in return, all of these things align with Christian principles of grace, mercy, and selfless love. And the chapter suggests that living this way, it opens us up to God's generosity.
All right, so that's the Restore section. Now, what about Renewal?
Yeah, so Renewal gets into this really interesting framework called mindset, aim, and practice.
map.
Yeah, and it's presented as a way to kind of guide us towards personal transformation.
Okay, so it's kind of like a roadmap.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So let's start with mindset. What kind of mindset should we be cultivating before we even attempt to settle a dispute?
Well, given what we've talked about with lingering resentment,
Right.
the chapter suggests that going into those conversations, we should really be grounded in humility, patience, and grace, and recognizing that healing, it doesn't always happen overnight. It might take time.
It's a process.
And the chapter references Hebrews 12 and Romans 12, both of which really encourage this patient approach to reconciliation.
It's almost like a reminder to go into those difficult conversations, not expecting to just, flip a switch and have everything be okay, but being prepared for a journey, towards healing.
Yeah, because even if you apologize and you kind of move past the argument itself,
Right.
those hurt feelings, they might still linger for a while.
And that's okay.
Yeah, and this mindset encourages us to be patient with that process.
Absolutely. So then shifting gears a bit, what about the mindset we should have before upholding our part of a bargain or an agreement?
Well, here the emphasis is on personal integrity, being committed to fulfilling your obligations regardless of what the other person does. And the chapter quotes Matthew 5 where it says, let your yes be yes.
Right.
And also Luke 16, which talks about being faithful even in small things.
It's really about taking ownership of our commitments.
Yeah.
Doing what's right because it's right, not because we're expecting a pat on the back.
Right. It's about your character.
Exactly. So imagine you're in a business deal and the other party starts to fall short on their end of the agreement.
Happens all the time.
Right. But this mindset encourages you to still honor your commitments to the best of your ability.
Yeah. Integrity is key.
Absolutely. So moving on, what about the mindset we should have before serving others or fulfilling obligations towards them?
Here the focus is on selflessness, doing good without any expectation of personal gain.
And there are some beautiful scriptures that speak to this, like Philippians 2, where it says, do nothing from selfish ambition or conceit, but in humility count others more significant than yourselves.
Right. In Matthew 10, freely you have received, freely give. Yeah, what's driving you to serve?
Are we doing it to get something in return, or is it truly an expression of care and compassion?
Yeah, like think about someone who volunteers in their community.
Right.
This mindset is encouraging them to do it out of a genuine desire to help.
Not to boost their own ego.
Exactly.
Okay, so then finally, what about the mindset we should cultivate before seeking blessings or recognition?
Here, the chapter points out that true blessings actually come from selfless service. It's about seeking God's approval rather than human praise.
And this is tough in today's world.
It is. Where we're constantly being told to, promote ourselves and showcase our achievements.
Social media.
Exactly. So this calls for a much more inward-focused serving because it aligns with our values, not because we want to be seen.
Right, it's about that inner compass.
Exactly. So we've covered mindset now. Let's shift to aim.
Right, the A in MAP.
Right. So what should our goal be before attempting to settle a dispute?
The chapter tells us that the primary aim should be peace and reconciliation.
Okay.
Even if full emotional healing takes time, the direction of our efforts should always be towards restoring peace and harmony.
And there are some powerful scriptures that support this, like Matthew 5. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God.
And 1 Peter 4, above all, keep loving one another earnestly, since love covers a multitude of sins.
So it's not just about smoothing things over on the surface, but about genuinely working towards a better relationship.
Repairing that connection.
Exactly. What about our aim before upholding bargains or agreements? Here the aim is personal integrity, being unwavering in our commitment to our word no matter what the other person does. And Matthew 5 comes up again here. Let your yes be yes and your no be no.
Right. So it's about establishing ourselves as someone who can be relied upon.
Yeah, being a person of your word.
Exactly. All right, so then what about our aim before engaging in service?
Here the aim should be to serve selflessly and humbly without any expectation of reward or recognition.
And there are some great scriptures that really drive this point home.
Yeah, like Matthew 23, which says, but whoever would be great among you must be your servant.
Right, and Philippians 2, let each of you look not only to his own interests, but also to the interests of others.
So the focus shouldn't be on what you can get out of it,
right,
but on the act of service itself.
Doing it out of love and compassion.
Exactly.
Okay, so lastly, what should our aim be before seeking blessings or recognition?
This one ties back to what we were talking about earlier. The aim should be to serve with a pure heart, seeking God's approval above all else.
Not the approval of other people.
Right, and Matthew 6 is really central here. Beware of practicing your righteousness before other people in order to be seen by them, for then you will have no reward from your Father who is in heaven.
It all comes back to that internal motivation.
Yeah, who are you trying to please?
Exactly. So we've covered mindset, we've covered aim. Now let's move into practice.
Okay, the P in MAP.
So how do we actually put these principles into action?
All right, so starting with settling disputes, the practice is to actively choose forgiveness and reconciliation, even if it's a gradual process.
Because sometimes those feelings don't just disappear overnight.
Exactly. And Colossians 3 encourages us to bear with each other, and if one has a complaint against another, forgive each other. As the Lord has forgiven you, so you also must forgive.
And we've already mentioned Matthew 5 about being peacemakers.
Right, so it's about making that conscious decision to let go of resentment.
Even if it takes time.
Yeah, it's an ongoing practice.
Absolutely. So how about practicing these principles before upholding bargains?
Here the practice is to consistently act with integrity,
Okay.
fulfilling our commitments without expecting anything in return.
And the scriptures that come up here are familiar ones.
Letting your yes be yes. And Luke 16, one who is faithful in a very little is also faithful in much, and one who is dishonest in a very little is also dishonest in much.
So it's about building a reputation of trustworthiness.
Yeah, being someone whose word means something.
Exactly. Okay, so then how about practicing these principles before engaging in service?
Here the practice is to serve selflessly,
Okay.
motivated by love and compassion, not by personal gain.
And again, we see those familiar scriptures.
Yeah, Philippians 2 about counting others more significant than yourselves.
Right.
And Matthew 23, the greatest among you shall be your servant.
So making selfless service a regular part of our lives.
Yes, a natural expression of who we are.
Okay, and finally, how do we practice these principles before seeking blessings?
The practice is to serve with a heart that's focused on God's approval, not on seeking recognition from others.
And Matthew 6 comes up again here.
Right. But when you give to the needy, do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing, so that your giving may be in secret.
It's about shifting our focus from external validation to internal integrity.
Yeah, and the chapter actually adds one more practice before trusting in God's provision. And the practice here is to actively trust in God's timing and provision as a consequence of our selfless service,
Okay.
referencing Matthew 20 and Philippians 4.
So it's about having faith that our actions will be acknowledged by God.
Yeah, in his own way and time.
I like that. So this whole renewal section, it really gives us a practical way to put these principles into practice.
Yeah, a roadmap for living them out.
Exactly. Now, the final section of the chapter is called Respond. So it starts by saying that renewal emphasizes the importance of engaging in meaningful dialogue to embrace shared truth that transcend cultural and religious boundaries.
Okay, so it's about finding common ground.
Exactly. And then it goes on to highlight 4 fundamental truths that are found within the text. And it connects those truths to teachings from various world religions.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So the first universal truth is the importance of peace and reconciliation.
Which takes us back to that opening question.
Exactly, about lingering resentment. Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, Buddhism, and Judaism, they all emphasize the value of peace.
They do.
Matthew 5.9 talks about peacemakers. Quran 49.9 says, if 2 parties among the believers fight, then make reconciliation between them.
The Bhagavad Gita 2.12 says, pleasures and pains arise from the contact of the senses with their objects. They come and go like the seasons, therefore endure them patiently.
Dhammapada 1.5 says, hatred does not cease by hatred at any time. Hatred ceases by love. This is an eternal law.
And Psalm 34, turn away from evil and do good. Seek peace and pursue it.
So it's clear that the desire for peace and harmony is a universal human longing.
Yeah, it cuts across cultural and religious boundaries.
Absolutely. And the chapter suggests a really practical application for this truth.
What's that?
Fostering community dialogue to help heal racial tensions.
That's so important.
All right, so the second universal truth is the principle of integrity and fulfilling one's commitments. And this idea of the righteous man honoring his agreements, it echoes teachings from Matthew 5.37. Let what you say be simply yes or no.
Quran 5.1, O you who have believed, fulfill all that is included in the contracts.
Bhagavad Gita 16.3, fearlessness, truthfulness, freedom from anger, nonviolence, self-restraint, steadfastness in knowledge, charity, forgiveness, fortitude, absence of hatred. These are the qualities of those born with divine nature.
Dhammapada, one should speak the truth and speak words that are gentle and kind and that do not offend.
And Proverbs 20.7, the righteous who walks in his integrity, blessed are his children after him.
So keeping your word, being a person of integrity.
It's a universally valued principle.
Yeah, it forms the foundation of trust.
Exactly. And the real-world application suggested here is maintaining ethical conduct at work even when others aren't.
That can be tough. All right, what about the third universal truth?
So this one is the importance of selfless service and fulfilling our obligations to others. And the idea of serving without demanding compensation. This is reflected in teachings from Matthew 20.26. But whoever would be great among you must be your servant.
Quran 17.24. And lower to them the wing of humility out of mercy and say, my Lord, have mercy upon them as they brought me up when I was small.
Bhagavad Gita 9.22. But those who worship me with devotion, meditating on my transcendental form to them, I carry what they lack and preserve what they have.
Dhammapada 6.3. To avoid all evil, to cultivate good, and to cleanse one's mind, that is the teaching of the Buddhas.
And Talmudavat 1.2. Be of the disciples of Aaron, loving peace and pursuing peace.
So giving without expecting anything in return.
It's a central theme in so many different traditions. And the example given here is volunteering at a food bank.
A simple yet powerful way to serve.
Absolutely. And then the final universal truth is the importance of seeking a higher purpose or approval beyond human recognition.
Okay.
And this aligns with teachings from Matthew 6.2. Thus, when you give to the needy sound no trumpet before you, as the hypocrites do in the synagogues and in the streets, that they may be praised by others, truly, I say to you, they have received their reward.
Sahih Muslim. Whoever seeks knowledge and acts upon it only to compete with the scholars or to argue with the foolish or to attract the attention of the people, Allah will throw him into hellfire.
Bhagavad Gita 3.19. Therefore, without being attached to the fruits of activities, one should act as a matter of duty, for by working without attachment, one attains the supreme.
Dhammapada 8.3. He who does what is wholesome, who keeps the precepts and speaks the truth, who ministers to his parents and supports his wife and children, and who is pure in his livelihood, he indeed gives a great gift.
And Talmud Barakat 9.5, Rabbi Yohanan said, whoever fulfills the Torah in poverty will ultimately fulfill it in wealth, and whoever violates the Torah in wealth will ultimately violate it in poverty.
So it's about focusing on inner motivation, seeking divine favor over worldly praise.
And the real-world application suggested here is helping others without seeking any kind of acknowledgement.
Yes, doing it out of the goodness of your heart.
Exactly. So it's really amazing to see how all of these different traditions converge on these fundamental principles.
Yeah, it really highlights their importance.
It does. It suggests that these aren't just religious ideas. They're essential truths that contribute to a more compassionate and harmonious world.
Absolutely.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Chapter 79 of the BFG Handbook.
Forgiving debt.
Yeah, forgiving debt, I think it's clear that it's about so much more than just resolving financial obligations.
Right.
It's about letting go of resentment, upholding our commitments with integrity, embracing selfless service, and seeking a higher purpose in life.
And it's about recognizing that these principles aren't confined to one specific religion or culture.
Right. They're universal truths that can guide us towards a more fulfilling and meaningful existence.
Yeah, a life that's aligned with our deepest values.
Exactly. So it really makes you think, how might consciously applying these principles of forgiveness and selfless service transform your relationships and your own sense of purpose?
It's a good question.
It is. And we hope this deep dive has given you some food for thought.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us.
See you next time.
Take care.